Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of LangBytes, your videocast about computational linguistics and careers in linguistics. And in today's episode, we have the honor and the privilege to talk to Michael Stone. Michael was originally studying to be a professor in linguistics, with an emphasis on social and cognitive linguistics. But after getting a job working on a virtual assistant, he moved to the realm of chatbots, where he has been placing his focus ever since. Throughout his career, Michael has worked on many chatbot projects, developing an understanding of the various technologies, but most importantly, the ideologies surrounding chatbots and AI. These beliefs are what draw much of his attention as we grapple with this new technology and figure out where it fits into our everyday lives. So, very interesting background. And again, Michael, thank you for accepting the invitation. Thank you for chatting with us today.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Right. So today we are going to move on now for the random question. And your random question is, if you hadn't studied linguistics, what would you have studied?
Well, funnily enough, I wasn't actually originally a linguistics major. I was a physics major, so I guess I would have to fall back to what my original plan was and go into physics.
Oh, nice. So then you did a minor in linguistics?
No, I got my major in linguistics, but originally my major was physics, and then I discovered
Oh,
linguistics and made a full shift.
okay. Nice. That's interesting. And did you do it like right at the beginning of the physics major, in the middle, at the end?
It was in my first year of my undergrad. So originally I started as a physics major, was taking physics classes and took a random linguistics course and fell in love, and that was the end of it.
Great. Nice. Um, so we would like to know first, how did you enter and how did you know about computational linguistics?
Actually, it wasn't until after school. So, as you already mentioned, my background or my educational background is in sociolinguistics. So, pretty much as far away from computational physics as you can get, at least at the time. Um, but once I completed my master's degree, I got this job at Apple working on Siri, and that was my first introduction to computational linguistics. I had no idea what was going on. I was just there to help interpret and analyze user conversations with Siri. But as I became more comfortable with it and learned more, I sort of got introduced into the world of computational linguistics through that job, and then my following jobs have sort of grown from there. But that was the jumping off point.
Nice. And did you take any courses on computational linguistics after getting to Apple?
Not a one, no, completely self-taught.
Nice. So you learned computational linguistics on the job and like
Hmm.
on the side studying by yourself.
Yeah.
Nice. Um, and now can you share a little bit of your journey into computational linguistics and how it led you to your current role? Because now you're working as a conversational AI designer at Wix. So
Hmm.
explain also what does that mean?
Okay. Yeah. So I guess as far as my journey goes, I started as a simple like QA tuner, which is to say I reviewed conversations and determined whether or not Siri was interpreting what was being said correctly. So it was very like low bar of needed information or needed knowledge. But as I continued to develop in my career, move on to Google and Wells Fargo, I became more involved in the NLP side of things and not just analyzing to see if the computer or the agent understood the user, but rather how we can make the agent understand them better. So that involves learning a lot about NLP, NLU, intents, entities, and how we develop those through training phrases, so that the agent can learn a little bit better about um, how users speak, more or less. But that was sort of how I grew into that. And then I moved into this new role at Wix as a conversation designer, just a regular conversation designer, which was interesting because I got to take what I had learned throughout my career so far in NLP and rejoin it with my linguistics background. Because as a conversation designer, what you're doing is not just NLP, but where the agent's understanding fits into the conversation at large. So I got to sort of bring in my knowledge of discourse analysis and to a lesser degree sociolinguistics, but um, got to pull these things in so that we could figure out and understand, okay, well, the agent understood this. Now, where does that fit? How do we respond? How do we follow up? How do we keep the conversation going with the user, not just a one-step understanding? So that's really what a conversation designer does, is they figure out what the user needs and understand the user journey to get to the solution. So from point A to point B, how do we get there? And then AI kind of exploded last year, and I got moved into conversational AI designing because obviously that was the next obvious step. That's where everyone's going nowadays, is integrating AI into their chatbots, into their platforms. And now we're really, moving into how can we integrate these AI concepts like generative AI, LLMs, RAG, all that into our chatbot in a more effective and more efficient way than what we were doing prior.
Very nice. And do you have to code a lot in this kind of job, or just like organize a conversational flow?
And you don't have to code, but it is definitely a very beneficial tool to have, because at least in my role, we have conversation designers or conversational AI designers even, but we also have a dev team and we have data scientists who help and work with us and collaborate. So you don't have to be the sole source of knowledge when it comes to computational linguistics. You have a team, and we all work together to achieve this goal. And that means that you don't have to be the one that is the master of Python, for example.
Mhm.
um, it helps to know that, obviously, um, and understand and be able to write Python code or any other scripting language, doesn't really matter. um, but um, it's more so that you can collaborate more effectively as opposed to being solely responsible for this part of the job.
Nice. I think you started answering one of the other questions, which is the insights or situations into the collaboration between linguistics and linguists and developers in the creation of conversational AI systems, because such as chatbots or assistants,
Mhm.
because linguists can bring a lot to the table about the conversational side, the language competency of systems, and the developers, of course, have to do the programming, the coding. So, how
Mhm.
does that work at your current job or previous jobs, if you want to mention them?
Um, well, it's actually really interesting, and I think that oftentimes the linguists get or a regular linguist, not non-computational linguists specifically, get overlooked as this is not their area or their area, their realm. But I think that's a misunderstanding because as I've worked through specifically my current job, and my understanding of discourse analysis and my understanding of ideologies and identity and sociolinguistics, even cognitive linguistics to a degree, has helped us to develop the chatbot that we have today, in that we are able to understand, okay, what does this wording mean really? Like, it's all well and good to write a response, but what does the wording that you put there mean? What happens if you use a contraction instead of cannot or do not? Is that different from don't? Um, what's the social significance there? What's the social significance between using please versus not please? All of that underlying information that is that is or super segmental. We'll actually not underlining. I'll put it above the syntax, above the tokens of machine learning. All of that stuff is something that linguists can bring to the table, and that insight, that I feel like makes a chatbot that is more nuanced than a simple understanding machine or a simple um, Q&A bot. It I don't know. It's just a matter of being able to understand the user, what the user is saying, and reflect that back to them in a way that requires a linguist's mind, in my opinion. Granted, I'm probably a little biased about that, but I do firmly believe that linguists should have a spot at the table when it comes to developing this.
Great. And has this ever happened in your job or previous roles as well? Like, um, you analyze a piece of the conversation, and then you kind of model it in linguistics terms how it should happen, and then you go to the developing team, and they said we don't have the technology for that.
Oh, it happens all the time. I, at least for me, I have rather large ideas,
Mhm.
imagination, as far as like, well, what about this? What about this? And I have to be reined in. But I think that's a lot of people who don't have the full understanding, um, of what we can do. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't ask and push those questions. So a lot of um, it's probably something that we can do more now. But I remember in a previous job we were talking about, there's sentiment analysis um, in our syntactic forms. So intense NLP that recognizes intent structures that are negative sentiment, for example, like using taboo language or exclamation points a lot or all caps. I don't know if you're typing. Um, but what if we take that into the realm of phonetics and are able to identify negative sentiment through super segmental features? That was something that I brought to the dev team, and they had to tell me, we don't have the ability to do that yet. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't like think about it and push for that. Um, but that discussion needs to happen and continue to happen in order for us to make changes and get to that spot. We might be able to do that now, for all I know. I don't know um, much about acoustic phonetics, admittedly, but that's just an example of something that linguists reach for the stars, and then we have to get reined in sometimes.
Yeah, that's sad, but that's a pretty good idea. I really liked it. Um, and I think it is interesting the shift that you experienced in your current role, because firstly you were a conversational designer, and then you became a conversational AI designer, right? There was a
Mhm.
AI input there. So I would like to know, how do you see computational linguistics evolving in the next few years, especially considering NLP, LLMs, or the developments in conversational AI?
I think it's going to explode, personally. So I know that there's a lot of contrasting beliefs about whether or not AI is going to replace people. I think I'm in the ball or on the team that AI is a tool that we need to use and can use. And I think computational linguists or linguists in general are right at the center of helping develop not just that tool, but also use that tool. So um, I think, or I believe that linguists are going to help develop the tools, generative AI, in that how does it interact with the user, but also understand how the user interacts with it. I'm actually doing research now on how users interact with generative AI in their prompting to understand what their underlying beliefs are regarding AI based on the wording and the way that they prompt it. So if they're using questions or command form imperatives to address the AI agent, then what does that mean?
Mhm.
Um, and that type of understanding can only really be derived from a computational perspective because you have to look at it from a viewpoint of stance. You have to look at it from the viewpoint of syntax, and all these other linguistic parameters or features that others
Mhm.
might overlook or think, okay, well, that's just a sentence. It doesn't really mean anything. Well, all language means something. Um,
Mhm.
so I think linguists are going to play a key role in the development of this technology moving forward.
Very nice. And is this research gonna be published?
I'm actually presenting on it at a conference in September,
Oh, no.
and it is, I can't remember the name of it. The Conference for AI Innovation or Artificial Intelligent Innovation Conference. I can't remember the exact title of the conference off the top of my head, but it's regarding AI innovations.
Nice, pretty nice. If you publish something about it, please send it to me so I can
Of course.
inform you as well. Great. And this thing I'm gonna say, I told you in our previous chat, but you are now a senior linguist. You have a lot of experience. You have taken many different roles. So my question for you, and I think this is gonna be very valuable for the viewers. So what do you consider the most critical skills or skill set for success in computational linguistics?
I think outside of our like having a general understanding of just a general understanding of linguistics and a general appreciation of linguistics, I think the key thing that you need or like skill that you need to have to succeed is the ability to grow, evolve, and adopt innovation. Because my personal experience, I was not a computational linguistic, or sorry, I was not a computational linguist when I started my career. This was something that was completely new to me. But the ability to take in this new information, embrace this new information, ask questions, and continue learning, even outside of academia, um, is key to being successful in this area. Because specifically with computational linguistics and really tech in general, or the world in general at this point, everything is changing and it's changing very rapidly. And we need to be able to embrace this development. Otherwise, what are you going to do? You'll become obsolete very quickly if you don't understand how to use these new tools.
And that's a good point. So, if the world is ever changing and you have always to upgrade yourself, especially professionally, how do you have any tips or how do you do it to keep up with everything that's coming up?
Um, be very curious and ask lots of questions, and do not be afraid to Google something. Um, I read a lot of journal articles just in my free time based on a random question I might have, and then going to Google and looking to see if there's any journal articles regarding it. That's how I learned about AI in general, was going to like Google Scholar and Googling current AI technologies or current AI methodologies and reading as much as I could on these new things, because you have to use the tools that you have, whether that's AI technology or journal articles or whatever resources you have. You have to use those to your advantage to continue ingesting or taking in information and knowledge. Like we said, um, it's always changing, so you need to be able to use all the resources to your advantage to keep up with it. And that means, asking the questions, taking it in, looking for it, actively looking for it. You can't just passively accept things to come along. You need to be active in your learning.
Great, great. And now going back to the question of the most critical skills, um, in your current role, what would you say would be the most important linguistics area that you apply every day or that you use the most?
hmm that would actually be discourse analysis, um, in that you need to understand the flow of a conversation. I mean, it's in the title. You have to, conversation designer, you have to understand what um, a good flow of a conversation looks like and why it looks like that, how to reconstruct it. Um, in order to do this job, you need to have a good understanding of the relationship between speakers, whether that's a computer and a human or a human and a human, it doesn't matter. In order to have a good conversational flow, you need to understand how to continue and maintain that relationship between the two speakers or more speakers if there are more, but chatbots are, it's generally a one-to-one ratio or
Mhm,
relationship. And so that's where I would say, like, as far as like non-computational linguistic areas of study that have helped me most, it's definitely discourse analysis.
mhm. And would you say that someone should have like formal education or just like the others, like a course on discourse analysis, or the other courses on linguistics, syntax, semantics, pragmatics, phonetics? These these courses already help you
I think
understand discourse analysis.
I think I think it's difficult to say because on the one hand, as I've already said, I'm a firm believer in like you can self learn or self teach. Um, if you are asking enough questions and you are willing to like look for it and learn, you can do it. So I don't think, or I don't want to say that you have to have a formal education in order to be successful in this career. I don't think that I think that's a little exclusionary. That being said, regardless of how you get the education, I think a firm or a strong foundation of linguistic knowledge is very important. You need to be able to understand the key features of like syntax, semantics, pragmatics, um, morphology or phonetics, even depending on like if you're doing text to speech, phonology will probably play a rather important role. So I do think you need a strong base to work with, but I won't say that it has to come from any specific source.
Mhm. Great, that's really good. Thank you. Um, and you have proficiency in other languages besides English, Italian, Russian, and Hebrew. And what role does your proficiency in those languages play in your career in computational linguistics? For example, did you have more opportunities of different roles because of your proficiency, or did you get a promotion because of your proficiency, or did you just like could read different papers in those languages because you know them?
Honestly, they my understanding of other languages has not played a large role in the development of my career. I'll be completely honest with you.
Mm-hmm. That's
I do, and as a linguist, I'm sure you've probably heard this, but there's this common misconception that if you're a linguist, you speak 100 different languages.
yeah.
The truth is, in my experience, linguists speak 20 different languages, but know 20 different languages, but actually speak two or three. Like I'm familiar with and know Turkish, Chinese, Japanese, all these other languages. I do not speak them. And that is not what a linguist is. A linguist is not a translator. That there's a key difference there. Um, and you already know this. I apologize if I'm explaining something that you are already quite familiar with, but you don't need to be a polyglot to be successful in this career, I think is the key takeaway there. Yes, it's helpful, especially if you are moving into an area that is works with localization or um, teaching languages. Like if you're working on a chatbot that its purpose is to teach language, then obviously having that other perspective is very important. But
Mhm.
it's not essential to my career at least, and I don't think it's essential to the success in the the job market at large.
Yeah. I have this opinion. I don't know if you're gonna agree, but for me, linguists should be at least bilingual.
I think that
Not for professional purposes, but like analytical linguistics purposes.
yes, I think it adds a unique perspective,
Hmm.
and appreciation and understanding that um, you can't get without learning another language.
Yeah.
Um, and I know that there's a lot of privilege, especially in the English speaking world, or English as an L1 speaking world, that everyone, or this misunderstanding that everyone speaks English, so you don't need to learn another language. But that's an entirely false understanding or concept, and very narrow minded, in my opinion. So, especially in linguistics, if you're going to be study linguistics, then you need to at least be open to learning another language and try. Like, I'm not saying that you have to become like completely fluent, but
Hmm.
you need to um, you need to embrace other languages as well. You cannot just sit back and accept being a monolingual person, if you're going to move into the career of linguistics. Um, this obviously, for me personally, and I kind of touched on it, moves into the sociolinguistic realm of
Hmm.
privilege and socio status and culture, which we could go into great depth, but that is not the purpose of this this talk.
That's great. Um, and do you think, for example, foreigners, people who are not from English-speaking countries, um, do you think that learning English would be valuable for the NLP industry?
Unfortunately, I think yes, I think, but my reasoning behind that is because of the perspective that existing computational linguistic careers have. They're largely Anglocentric, and that's not fair. And I don't think that's correct. And in fact, there's this, I mean, even with these LLMs, they're not trained on a ton of different languages. They're trained on a handful of the quote unquote major languages, but a lot, like hundreds of languages, are falling through the gaps or even disappearing because they aren't given the appropriate attention. And so, yes, I think learning English an important is important, not key to being successful, but I
Hmm.
don't think that's appropriate.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't think that's something for new people coming into it shouldn't be the responsibility of the new career people to change. It should be the responsibility of those higher up to see that need to change and make that change for us. Um, but that is also the reality of the situation, is there's a disparity in the privilege and the social power, if you will,
Mhm.
of this one language, English, over others.
Yeah. I also believe that there is some uh, political reason behind it, and economic as well.
Hmm.
Because, for example, here in Brazil, we could do a bunch of technologies about on Brazilian Portuguese, but sadly, there aren't enough. There isn't enough companies of AI technology or technology in general. They are here in Brazil to make Brazilian Portuguese products.
Hmm.
And on the other hand, in the USA, in London, in Dublin, there are several companies that work with English, let's say English speaking products.
Hmm.
Then so then they have more roles, they have more open slots for people, for computational linguists or NLP scientists that could
Hmm.
apply for those jobs. So I believe that learning English could fill that void.
Yes.
Um, and now, As our last question, I would like to ask you if you could offer any advice, any piece of advice to aspiring computational linguists, especially those who are studying, for example, studying their major and they're interested in computational linguistics, or people who have graduated in linguistics but want to start in computational linguistics.
As far as advice goes, anything, I've already said you need to be open to learning and continuously learning. That's my biggest point of advice. But as far as anything else goes, I think that um, you just you it can be scary because it's a big changing world. Like tech is a big thing. Um, so it can be scary, but you just have to um, be ready and willing to sort of like put yourself out there.
Mhm.
And I'm an introvert. I totally get it. It's not a comfortable thing. Um, but you, you need to continue to grow and you need to um, be flexible or dynamic. Dynamic might be the best word for it because technology is dynamic. Um, that's just the way it is. I mean, it's exciting. Like you should be excited about this. Like we don't want to be dealing with something that's static and monolithic, um, because then it gets boring very quickly, and becomes stale. But in order for this stuff to continue growing, we need to continue growing with it.
And we have to remember that in the near future, perhaps, linguistics is not going to be only linguistics, it's going to be computational linguistics. Maybe you won't do like um, only qualitative syntax. Maybe you have to do
Mhm.
quantitative syntax. And of course, you're going to have statistics, programming, data science involved. So it's better if you can learn it today so that you are prepared for the future.
Exactly. Yeah. You need to be well rounded in your understanding of um, the world. That sounds rather large, but if you're in a technical career, specifically around computational linguistics, then just embrace all of that information that is available, um, because it will become helpful or useful at some point. Like my experience with discourse or sociolinguistics, it became helpful later on in my career, and I didn't even know it would be. But you never know what information you're going to learn that will be helpful later on.
Yeah. So that's it, Michael. Thank you very much. It was again lovely to see you, love to chat with you. You brought a lot of different perspectives and a lot of good tips for the viewers, I believe so. And I'm sure people that are watching this video right now, they are learning a lot from you. So thank you again.
Of course, no, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So guys, thank you very much for watching. Again, Michael, thank you very much. I hope to see you, the viewers, and Michael, if you want to, on the next episodes of LangBytes. So thank you. Bye.